My hand was shaking so hard I could barely hold the key. I stood there on the porch, rain dripping down my neck, staring at the red sedan parked in my driveway. I knew that car. I had seen it before. And now, standing outside my own front door, I could hear voices coming from inside. Then I heard him. My husband. The man I had trusted with my life for 7 years. His voice was low, husky, the kind of tone he used to use with me when we were first dating. "You're so tight," he whispered. I pressed my ear against the cold wood of the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Seriously, you are so tight, not like my wife. She's gotten so loose lately." I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees buckled. I had to grab the porch railing just to keep from collapsing right there in the mud. My world, my perfect little life, shattered in a single second. But I didn't scream. I didn't kick the door down, not yet. Because I needed to know who she was. And what I was about to find out. It wouldn't just break my heart. It would change everything I thought I knew about my past, my family, and the man I loved. Let me back up a bit. My name is Sarah, and up until that rainy Tuesday night, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. I was married to Mark. Mark was the kind of guy who still opened car doors. The kind of guy who left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror saying, "You look beautiful," even when I had bedhead and morning breath. We met in college. I was the stressed-out library girl buried under law books. He was the relaxed graphic designer who brought me coffee when I looked like I was about to cry. We were opposites, but we fit. For 7 years, things were easy, comfortable. We had our routine. Friday night pizza, Sunday morning hikes, the occasional fight about whose turn it was to do the dishes. Normal stuff. But looking back, I should have seen the signs. About 2 months ago, things started to shift. It wasn't anything big at first, just little things. Mark became obsessed with his phone. He'd take it into the shower. He'd flip it face down the second I walked into the room. When I asked who he was texting, he'd give that casual shrug and say, "Just work stuff, babe. Client is being a nightmare." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was Mark. He couldn't lie to save his life, or so I thought. Then came the business trip. I work as a corporate consultant, which means I travel a lot. Usually, Mark hates it when I leave. He gets pouty, asks me to leave one of my t-shirts on his pillow so he can smell my perfume. It's sweet. But this time, he was practically packing my bags for me. "You should go, Sarah," he had said, handing me my passport with a little too much enthusiasm. "It's a great opportunity. Plus, I've got a ton of work to catch up on here. It'll be good for us to have some focus time." Focus time, that's what he called it. I felt a little sting, but I brushed it off. We had been busy. Maybe he just needed space. So I kissed him goodbye, got in my Uber, and headed to the airport for a week-long conference in Chicago. The first 2 days were fine. We texted. He sent me pictures of his dinner, takeout Chinese, leftover pizza. He seemed normal. But by the 3rd day, the text slowed down. When I called him at night, he didn't pick up. "Sorry, babe, fell asleep early," he texted the next morning. "Sorry, in a meeting," he texted at lunch. "Battery dying, call you tomorrow," he texted at dinner. My gut started to twist. You know that feeling? That heavy, cold stone in the bottom of your stomach that tells you something is wrong before your brain even figures it out. I had that feeling. Then the conference got canceled. A pipe burst in the main convention center, flooding the main hall. The organizers sent everyone home 3 days early. I was thrilled. I could surprise Mark. I could cook his favorite lasagna, open a bottle of wine, and we could have a romantic night in. I didn't call him. I wanted to see the look on his face when I walked through the door. I changed my flight, rented a car at the airport because I didn't want to wait for a taxi in the storm, and drove home. The drive was awful. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the highway lights. I was gripping the steering wheel, listening to the radio, trying to push down that nagging anxiety in my chest. He's just busy, I told myself. He's probably playing video games in his underwear and eating cereal for dinner. I turned onto our street around 9:00 p.m. The neighborhood was quiet, most of the houses dark. As I pulled up to our driveway, my headlights swept across the front of the house. That's when I saw it. A car. Not Mark's truck, a small red sedan. I frowned, squinting through the rain-streaked windshield. It looked familiar. Where had I seen that car? Then it clicked. I had seen it at the grocery store last week, and at the gas station a few days before that. I hadn't thought anything of it at the time. It's a small town, you see the same cars around. But parked in my driveway, at 9 p.m., while I was supposed to be hundreds of miles away. My stomach dropped. Maybe it was a friend, but Mark's friends all drove trucks or SUVs. Maybe a client. Mark worked from home sometimes, but never this late. I turned off the ignition. The silence in the car was deafening, broken only by the rhythmic asterisk thrum-thrum asterisk of the rain on the roof. I sat there for a full minute, just breathing. "Don't be paranoid, Sarah," I whispered. "There's a logical explanation." I grabbed my purse, pulled my coat tight around me, and stepped out into the storm. I didn't use the garage door opener. The motor is loud. It rumbles through the whole house. Instead, I crept up the front walk, stepping carefully to avoid the loose paver that always clanks. I reached the front door. I pulled out my keys, my fingers slippery and cold. I unlocked the door as quietly as I could. Click. I pushed it open just an inch. The house was warm. It smelled different. Usually our house smells like vanilla candles or whatever Mark cooked. Tonight it smelled like flowers, heavy, sweet perfume. My heart started to race. I stepped inside and closed the door softly behind me. The living room was dark, but there was a light on upstairs, in our bedroom. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening. Creak. I took one step up. Then I heard it, a giggle. A woman's giggle. It wasn't the TV. It wasn't a movie. It was a real, live woman laughing in my bedroom. And then Mark's voice. "Hold still," he said. His voice was playful, teasing. "If you keep moving, I can't get this right." "It's too tight, Mark," the woman said. Her voice was high, breathy. "I can't breathe." "SHHH," Mark said. "Just relax, let me handle it." I felt like I was going to throw up. I gripped the banister, my knuckles turning white. This couldn't be happening. Not us, not Mark. I took another step, then another. I was halfway up the stairs now. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, a sliver of golden light spilling out onto the hallway floor. I crept closer, holding my breath. I felt like a ghost in my own home. I reached the landing. I was just outside the door now. I could see shadows moving against the wall. "Okay," Mark said, grunting a little. "Turn around." "Like this?" the woman asked. "Yeah, perfect. Wow." There was a pause, a silence that lasted too long. And then he said it, the line that ripped my soul in half. "You're so tight. Seriously, look at that. You're so tight, not like my wife. She's gotten so loose lately." The woman laughed again. "Well, maybe you need an upgrade." "Maybe I do," Mark chuckled. "You feel amazing." I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. Loose, he was talking about asterisk me, after everything. After the gym memberships I bought to look good for him. After 7 years of loyalty. I felt tears stinging my eyes, hot and angry. But underneath the sadness, something else was bubbling up. Ray. Pure, white-hot rage. I wanted to burst in their screaming. I wanted to tear the room apart. But then, a thought crossed my mind. If I walked in there now, they would just deny it. They would cover up. He would make up some excuse. I needed proof. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. I swiped to the camera app and hit record. I took a deep breath. "You can do this, Sarah," I told myself. "Just get the shot, then end him." I stepped into the doorway. The scene in front of me was blurry through my tears, but I blinked them away. Mark was standing by the bed. His back was to me. He was kneeling. In front of him was a woman. She was facing him, so her back was to me as well. She had long, dark hair cascading down her back. She was wearing something white. Mark's hands were on her waist. He was fumbling with something at the small of her back. Almost got it, he muttered. Mark, the woman said, her voice sounding weirdly familiar now. Are you sure this is a good idea, if Sarah finds out? Sarah isn't going to find out, Mark said confidently. She's in Chicago. By the time she gets back, everything will be different. Different. That word echoed in my head. I couldn't take it anymore. What exactly will be different, Mark? I asked. My voice was quiet, but in the silent room, it sounded like a gunshot. Mark jumped. He actually jumped. He spun around so fast, he almost tripped over his own feet. Sarah, he yelled, his eyes going wide. Oh my God. The woman turned around too. And that's when I saw her face. I gasped. The phone almost slipped from my hand. I knew her. I didn't just know her. I knew her better than anyone. But it was impossible. You, I whispered, what are you doing here? The woman looked at me, her eyes wide with panic. She looked terrified. It was my sister, Emily. My little sister, Emily. But that wasn't the shock. The shock was that Emily had been living in London for the past 3 years. We hadn't spoken in 6 months because of a stupid fight over money. And she was standing in my bedroom, with my husband, wearing my wedding dress. I stared at the dress. The silk, the lace, the dress I had worn 7 years ago, the dress I had boxed up and put in the attic, promising to save it for our daughter if we ever had one. Emily was wearing it, and Mark was zipping her up. Sarah, wait, Mark said, holding up his hands. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like? I laughed, a harsh, hysterical sound. You're with my sister, in our bedroom, putting her in my wedding dress, and telling her how tight she is compared to me. Sarah, please, Emily said, stepping forward. She looked ridiculous, the dress slightly too short for her, bunching at the waist. Just listen. You shut up, I snapped at her. You don't get to speak. You haven't called me in months, and I come home to find you playing dress-up with my husband. I looked at Mark. And you, she's so loose. You were talking about me. Mark's face went red. Sarah, no, I was talking about the... I heard you, I screamed. I heard every word. I felt dizzy. The room was spinning. I looked at the bed. There were boxes everywhere, suitcases. Are you leaving me? I asked, my voice trembling. Is that it? You're running away together. Mark looked confused. Leaving you? Sarah, look around. I looked, really looked. The boxes weren't packed for travel. They were new, deliveries. There were flowers on the dresser, not just a few, dozens of white roses, my favorite. There was a banner half-taped to the wall. It was folded, so I could only see the word happy. What is going on? I whispered. Mark took a step toward me. He looked terrified, but not in the way a cheater looks terrified. He looked worried. Sarah, he said softly, please put the phone down, let me explain. Explain why you said I was loose, I spat out. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. He looked at Emily, then back at me. The dress, Sarah, he said. We were talking about the dress. I blinked. What? The zipper, Emily said quietly. It's stuck. Mark was trying to zip it up. He said *I was tight in it because, well, I've gained a little weight since college. I stared at them. And the part about me being loose? I asked, crossing my arms. Mark cringed. The mannequin, the dress form, in the attic. The what? I was practicing on the dress form yesterday, Mark said rapidly, to see if I could clean the lace, but the dress form is old and the fabric is slippery, so the dress was loose on it. When Emily put it on, it was tight. I said it's not like my wife's form. That one is loose. My brain was trying to process this. It sounded plausible, stupid but plausible. But why? I asked. Why is she in my dress? Why are you here? Mark took a deep breath. He walked over to me and took my hands. His hands were warm. Because our anniversary is next week, he said. 7 years. I know that, I said. Well, Mark said, looking down at his feet and then back up at me with those puppy dog eyes. I wanted to surprise you. You've been so stressed with work. You've been sad about, us not getting pregnant yet. I flinched. That was a sore spot, a very sore spot. I wanted to do a vow renewal, Mark said. A surprise ceremony, just us and family, in the backyard. I invited Emily back from London to surprise you. She's been hiding in the guest room for 2 days. I looked at Emily. She gave a weak wave. Surprise, she squeaked. She was trying on the dress to make sure it didn't have any moth holes or stains, Mark explained. She's roughly your size. Well, she used to be. Hey, Emily protested. And I was trying to zip it up when you walked in, Mark finished. I wasn't cheating on you, Sarah. I was trying to give you the perfect day. I stood there, the anger draining out of me, replaced by a wave of exhaustion and confusion. It made sense. It was sweet. It was typical Mark. So, I said, feeling like an idiot, you weren't talking about my body. God, no, Mark said, looking horrified. Sarah, you're perfect. I was talking about the stupid plastic mannequin in the attic. I let out a long breath. I dropped my phone onto the bed. I feel like a jerk, I whispered. Mark pulled me into a hug. It's okay. It sounded bad, I get it. I buried my face in his chest. I smelled his cologne. It smelled like home. I'm sorry, I mumbled into his shirt. I'm so sorry. It's okay, he said, kissing the top of my head. You're home early. That's the only problem. Now the surprise is ruined. Not ruined, I said, pulling back and smiling weakly. Just early. Emily awkwardly shuffled toward us in the wedding dress. Can someone please unzip me? I can't breathe. We all laughed. The tension broke. I helped Emily out of the dress. We hugged. We cried a little about how long it had been. Mark ordered pizza. For the next hour, everything felt perfect. We sat on the bedroom floor, eating pizza, talking about the vow renewal. Mark showed me the plans. He had hired a caterer. He had invited my parents. It was going to be beautiful. I felt so guilty for doubting him. I looked at this man, this wonderful man, and I thanked my lucky stars. But then, something happened. We were cleaning up the pizza boxes. Mark went downstairs to take out the trash. Emily was in the bathroom, changing back into her normal clothes. I was folding the wedding dress to put it back in the box. As I smoothed out the silk, my hand brushed against the pocket. I didn't even know this dress had pockets. I felt something inside, a piece of paper. I frowned. I hadn't put anything in there 7 years ago. I reached in and pulled it out. It was a receipt. But it wasn't old. It was dated yesterday. It was a receipt from a jewelry store. Oh, he bought me a ring too, I smiled to myself. He really went all out. I looked at the item listed. Custom diamond bracelet, $5,000. Wow, Mark was insane. We couldn't afford that, but it was sweet. I was about to put the receipt back when I saw the bottom of the slip. Customer name, Mark Thompson. Delivery address, 412 Oak Street. I froze. 412 Oak Street. That wasn't our address. We lived at 78 Maple Lane. 412 Oak Street was on the other side of town. Who lived at 412 Oak Street? I pulled out my phone. My hands started shaking again. I typed the address into Google Maps. It was a small apartment complex. Then, just to be sure, I typed the address into the county property search. It's a tool I use for work all the time. The owner's name popped up. Jessica Miller. Jessica Miller. The name hit me like a physical blow. Jessica Miller was Mark's ex-girlfriend from high school, the one who broke his heart, the one he swore he hadn't spoken to in 10 years. I stared at the receipt. Yesterday, he bought a $5,000 bracelet for Jessica Miller yesterday. While I was in Chicago. While he was planning a vow renewal for me. The room suddenly felt very cold. Hey, babe, Mark shouted from the bottom of the stairs. I'm gonna grab a beer, you want one? I looked at the door. He had lied. The dress, the sister, the vow renewal. It was all real, but it was a cover. A distraction. He was doing something grand and romantic to clear his conscience because he was doing something else on the side. He wasn't sleeping with Emily, that was true. But he was seeing Jessica. And he had spent $5,000 of our savings on her. My blood turned to ice. I looked at Emily coming out of the bathroom. She looked happy, oblivious. "What's wrong?" she asked, seeing my face. I crumpled the receipt in my hand. "Nothing," I said. My voice sounded dead to my own ears. "Everything is fine." But it wasn't fine. I had a choice to make. I could confront him now. I could scream and yell and wave the receipt in his face. But he was a smooth talker. He'd talked his way out of the tight comment. He'd come up with some excuse for this. "It's a donation," or "it's for his mom and he used an old address." No. I needed to see it. I needed to catch him. "Emily," I said, forcing a smile, "I'm actually really tired from the drive. Do you mind if we call it a night?" "Of course," she said. "I'll go to the guest room." When Mark came upstairs, I pretended to be asleep. He climbed into bed next to me. He kissed my cheek. "Good night, beautiful," he whispered. "I love you." I lay there in the dark, my eyes wide open, listening to his breathing slow down as he fell asleep. I waited 1 hour. Then I slowly, carefully slid out of bed. I grabbed Mark's keys from the nightstand. I needed to go to 412 Oak Street. I crept downstairs. The rain was still pounding against the windows. I got into my rental car. I didn't turn on the headlights until I was down the block. I drove through the dark, wet streets, my heart pounding a rhythm of revenge. I pulled up to the apartment complex. It was a dingy, brick building. I found Unit 412. It was on the ground floor. The lights were off. I sat in the car, watching, waiting. I didn't know what I expected to see. And then a car pulled up. It was a black SUV. A man got out. He was wearing a hood, but I recognized the walk. Wait. That wasn't Mark. Mark was asleep in my bed. Who was this? The man walked up to Unit 412. He didn't knock. He used a key. He walked inside. The lights turned on. I saw a silhouette in the window. A woman, Jessica Miller. I recognized her from old photos. She walked up to the man. They hugged. Then the man pulled down his hood. I gasped. I knew him too. It was Mark's brother, David. David. Mark's brother David was supposed to be in jail. He had been sentenced to 5 years for fraud back in 2020. He wasn't supposed to be out for another 2 years. Why was David at Mark's ex-girlfriend's house? And why did Mark buy a bracelet sent to this address? Suddenly, the pieces started floating in my head, but they weren't making a picture. They were making a nightmare. Mark wasn't cheating on me with Jessica. Mark was funding David. But why? I watched through the window. David was packing back and forth. He looked angry. He was waving his arms. Jessica was crying. Then, David did something that made my blood run cold. He went to a duffel bag on the floor. He unzipped it. He pulled out a gun. I covered my mouth to stop a scream. He wasn't just out of jail. He was in trouble, deep trouble. And Mark, my sweet, goofy Mark, was involved. I reached for my phone to call 911. But then my phone buzzed in my hand. A text message. From Mark. "I know you're not in bed, Sarah." I froze. Another text came through. "And I know where you are. Don't go inside." I stared at the screen. How did he know? "Come home now," the next text read, "before you get us both killed." I looked back at the apartment window. David was pointing the gun at the door. I looked at my phone. I looked at the dark street. I slammed the car into reverse. I didn't know who my husband was anymore, but I knew one thing. This wasn't about an affair. This was about survival. I sped home, my mind racing. Was Mark a criminal? Was he a victim? I pulled into the driveway. The house was dark. I ran inside. Mark, I called out. Silence. Mark. I ran upstairs. The bedroom was empty. The closet was open. His suitcase was gone. And so was my passport. On the bed, where he had been sleeping an hour ago, was a note. One single piece of paper. Sarah, I tried to protect you. The vow renewal, the surprise. I wanted you to have one last happy memory before everything fell apart. David is in debt to bad people. I tried to pay them off with the bracelet money, but it wasn't enough. They know who you are. They know you're home. I've gone to meet them to buy us time. Take the car, go to your parents, don't look for me. I love you. M. I stood there, the note trembling in my hand. Buy us time. I heard a sound downstairs. Glass breaking. Heavy boots on the hardwood floor. They were here. Mark hadn't bought us time. He had led them right to me. I looked at the window. It was a 20-foot drop to the backyard. I looked at the bedroom door. The footsteps were coming up the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. Sarah, a deep voice boomed from the stairs. Come out, Sarah, Mark sent us. I looked around the room frantically. I needed a weapon. I needed a way out. My eyes landed on the mannequin, the dress form. It was heavy, solid wood base. I grabbed it. I stood behind the door. The handle turned. Click. The door pushed open. A man stepped in. He was huge. He had a scar running down his face. Sarah, he growled. I didn't hesitate. I swung the mannequin with every ounce of strength I had. Crack. The wooden base connected with his head. He went down like a sack of potatoes. But there was another man behind him. You witch, the second man yelled. He lunged at me. I scrambled back, tripping over the wedding dress box. I fell hard. The man was on top of me in a second. His hands were around my throat. Where is the money? He screamed. Where did Mark put the diamonds? I don't know, I choked out. Liar, he tightened his grip. I couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in my vision. My hand scrabbled on the floor. I felt something cold. The scissors. The fabric scissors Mark had been using to trim the loose threads on the dress. I grabbed them. I jammed them into the man's shoulder. He howled in pain and rolled off me. I scrambled up, gasping for air. I ran. I ran down the stairs, past the broken glass. I burst out the front door into the rain. I didn't stop at my car. They would expect that. I ran into the woods behind our house. I ran until my lungs burned. I ran until I couldn't feel my legs. I collapsed under a large oak tree, shivering, soaked, terrified. I was alone. My husband was gone. Criminals were hunting me. And apparently, there were diamonds involved. I sat there in the mud, crying. But as the sun began to rise, turning the gray sky into a bruised purple, something changed in me. I stopped crying. Mark had lied to me. He had endangered me. He had stolen my passport. He thought I was weak. He thought I was the loose wife who needed protecting. He was wrong. I wiped the mud off my face. I wasn't going to my parents. I wasn't going to hide. I was going to find Mark. And I was going to get answers. I stood up. Okay, Mark, I whispered to the empty woods. You want to play games, let's play. But as I turned to leave the woods, I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. Hidden under a pile of leaves, about 50 yards from my house, was Mark's car. He hadn't left. He was still here. I crept toward the car. The windows were fogged up. I wiped the glass. And I screamed. Mark was in the driver's seat. He was slumped over the wheel. And sitting next to him, holding a gun, was my sister, Emily. My heart slammed against my ribs, so hard I thought they would crack. I stared through the rain-streaked window. Emily, my little sister, the one who cried when she stepped on a bug. She was holding a gun. And my husband was slumped over the wheel, motionless. My brain couldn't process the image. It was like trying to read a book in a language I didn't speak. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just reacted. I ripped the car door open. Emily, I screamed, the sound tearing out of my throat. Emily jerked her head up. Her eyes were wild, red-rimmed, terrified. She swung the gun toward me. I froze. My hands shot up in the air. Don't, she shrieked. Her hands were shaking so bad the gun was vibrating. Emily, it's me, I yelled over the sound of the rain. It's Sarah. She blinked, squinting through the downpour. Then her face crumbled. Sarah, she sobbed. Oh my God, Sarah. She dropped the gun. It landed with a dull thud on the muddy floor mat. I lunged forward. I grabbed her shoulders. What did you do? What did you do to him? I didn't, she cried, grabbing my coat. I didn't do it. He's hurt, Sarah. He's really hurt. I looked past her. Mark. His head was lolling on his chest. His skin was gray, the color of old ash. There was a dark, wet stain spreading across the side of his shirt. Blood. Mark. I reached across Emily, pressing my fingers to his neck. Nothing. I pressed harder. Thump, thump, thump. It was faint, it was slow, but it was there. He's alive, I breathed. We have to get him to a hospital. No. Emily grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. No hospitals. Mark said no hospitals. If we go there, they'll find us. Who? I shouted. Who will find us? The men, she whispered, looking into the dark woods. The men in the house. They're not just robbers, Sarah. They're cleaners. Cleaners. The words sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the rain. Get in the back, I ordered. My voice was suddenly calm, cold. Hold pressure on his wound. I'm driving. Emily scrambled into the back seat. I jumped into the driver's side. I pushed Mark's heavy body back against the seat. He groaned, a low, pained sound that broke my heart. I've got you, I whispered to him. I'm here. I threw the car into drive and gunned it. We fishtailed out of the mud, tires spinning, spraying dirt and leaves everywhere. I didn't turn on the headlights. I drove by the moonlight, navigating the old logging road that led away from our property. Where are we going? Emily asked, her voice trembling. The cabin, I said. Mark's uncle's old cabin. Nobody knows about it except us. It was a 40-minute drive, the longest 40 minutes of my life. Every bump in the road made Mark groan. Every pair of headlights in the rearview mirror made my heart stop. Keep pressing, I yelled at Emily. I am. There's so much blood, Sarah. Just keep pressing. We finally reached the cabin. It was a small, rotting wooden shack near the lake. I kicked the door open. We dragged Mark inside and laid him on the dusty couch. I ran to the kitchen. I found the first aid kit Mark always kept there for fishing accidents. I cut open his shirt. The wound was on his side. A graze. A deep one, but it hadn't hit any organs. He had lost blood, but the bullet had passed through the fleshy part of his waist. Thank God, I whispered. I started cleaning it, pouring alcohol over the wound. Mark's eyes flew open. He gasped, his back arching off the couch. Easy, easy, I said, pushing him down. It's me, you're safe. Mark blinked, his eyes trying to focus. When he saw me, he started to cry. Sarah, he rasped, I told you to run. Yeah, well, I said, wrapping a bandage tight around his waist. You know I never listen. He let out a weak laugh that turned into a cough. Emily, he asked. I'm here, Mark, Emily said from the corner. She was holding the gun again, staring out the window. Nobody followed us. I sat back on my heels. My hands were covered in my husband's blood. Okay, I said. The adrenaline was fatting, leaving me shaking and nauseous. Talk, now. Mark closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. It's not what you think, he said. You have 5 minutes, I said. Before I drag you to the police station myself. Why did you lie? Why is my sister holding a gun? And why are people trying to kill us? Mark looked at Emily, then at me. The tight comment, he said. Remember. I felt my face heat up. Really? You want to talk about that now? It wasn't about the dress form, he said, and it wasn't about you. Then what was it? It was code, Emily said from the window. She didn't turn around. Mark and I, we have signals from when we were kids. Signals. Tight means secured, Mark said softly. Loose means compromised. I stared at him. So when you said, she's so tight, not like my wife, she's gotten loose. I was telling Emily that the package was secured in the dress, Mark said, and that you were compromised. The air left the room. Compromised, I whispered. Me, I'm your wife, Mark. I'm the victim here. No, Mark said. He reached out and took my hand. His grip was weak but desperate. Sarah, who sent you on that trip to Chicago? My boss, I said. Greg, he said it was a huge opportunity. And who canceled the conference? The organizers, a pipe burst. There was no pipe, Mark said. I checked. The conference was never canceled. You were sent home early. I frowned. Why? Because Greg wanted you home, Mark said. He wanted you in the house tonight. Why? Because he needed a witness, Mark said, or a casualty. I pulled my hand away. You're crazy. Greg is my mentor. He's been helping me for 5 years. Greg is laundering money for the cartel, Mark said. The words hung in the air like smoke. I laughed. I actually laughed. It was absurd. Greg was a boring, balding man who collected vintage stamps. It's true, Sarah, Emily said, finally turning around. David, Mark's brother. He didn't steal from a bank. He worked for Greg's shell company. He found the ledger, the digital ledger that proves everything. David tried to blackmail Greg, Mark continued. But Greg is dangerous. He sent people after David. David came to me. He gave me the ledger to hide. The bracelet, I said, remembering the receipt. The delivery to Jessica Miller. Decoy, Mark said. I knew they were watching my accounts. I bought that bracelet and sent it to Jessica's old address to make them think I mailed the ledger there. It bought us 12 hours while they tore that apartment apart. And the real ledger? I asked. Mark looked at me. His eyes were intense. It's in the dress, he said. My stomach dropped. Where in the dress? The corset, he said. I cut the lining, I slid the micro drive inside the boning, then I sewed it back up. That's why I was checking the zipper. That's why I said it was tight. I had just finished sealing it. I stood up. I felt dizzy. So, I said slowly, the evidence that can put away a cartel, and my boss, is in my wedding dress. Yes, Mark said. We just need to get it to the FBI. Once they have it, Greg is done. We're safe. I looked at Mark. Then I looked at Emily. And then I started to hyperventilate. Sarah, Emily took a step toward me. Breathe. I can't, I choked out. I can't breathe. Why? Mark tried to sit up. What's wrong? I looked at them, tears streaming down my face. The dress, I whispered. What about it? I didn't bring it, I said. We ran, I left it. Mark's face went white. Where did you leave it, Sarah? In the bedroom, I said. In the box, right where the bad guys were. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. They have it, Emily whispered. They have the ledger. If they find it, Mark said, his voice hard, they will destroy it, and then they will come for us. Because without that drive, we have no leverage. We're just loose ends. We have to go back, I said. Are you insane? Emily yelled. There were 3 men with guns. I stabbed one, I said, a strange sense of pride rising in my chest. And I knocked the other one out with a mannequin. Mark looked at me, a mixture of shock and admiration on his face. You did what? I'm not the loose wife you think I am, I said fiercely. I can handle myself. No, Mark said. It's too dangerous. They'll be watching the house. They won't expect us to come back, I argued. They think we're running. They think we're halfway to Canada by now. Sarah. Mark, listen to me, I said, kneeling beside him. If Greg really is behind this, my career is over. My life is over. I'm going to be framed for this, aren't I? Mark looked down. Yes, the accounts. David said Greg put your name on the shell corporations. If the feds investigate, it looks like you are the laundromat. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest. Greg, the man I had trusted, the man who came to our wedding, he had been setting me up for years. I am not going to prison for that bald-headed traitor, I hissed. We are getting that dress. Mark sighed. He nodded. Okay, but we need a plan, and we need to know if they still have it. How? Mark smirked. It was a weak smirk, but it was there. My phone. I dropped it under the bed when you walked in, but it's still recording. He pointed to his back pocket. I have a burner phone. It's linked. I grabbed the burner phone from his pocket. Mark unlocked it with shaking fingers. He opened an app. A grainy video feed popped up. It was looking up from the floor, under the bed. The angle was low, showing mostly shoes and the bottom of the furniture. Turn up the volume, Mark whispered. I tapped the screen. Voices, angry voices. Searched everywhere. The guy isn't here. Forget the guy. What about the wife? She ran into the woods. Viper is tracking her. Look at this, a new voice said. It was calm, smooth. I recognized that voice. My blood froze. It was Greg. On the screen, a pair of expensive Italian loafers stepped into the frame. A wedding dress, Greg's voice said, touching. Boss, should we burn it? One of the thugs asked. No, Greg said. Bring it. We need to check everything. If David gave the drive to Mark, he might have hidden it in something sentimental. These people are predictable. I watched horrified. As a hand reached down and grabbed the box, the view shook as the bed skirt moved. Take it to the warehouse, Greg ordered. The one on 4th Street, and find the girl. I want her alive. She needs to sign some documents before she disappears. The video cut out. The battery on Mark's main phone must have died. I lowered the burner phone. They're taking it to the warehouse, I said, on 4th Street. I know that place, Mark said. It's a fortress, cameras, guards. We can't break in there, Emily said, shaking her head. It's suicide. We don't have to break in, I said. My mind was racing, connecting dots I hadn't seen before. We just need to get in. How? Greg said he wants me alive, I said slowly. He wants me to sign documents. So, I stood up, wiping the blood off my hands onto my jeans. I'm going to give him what he wants. I'm going to turn myself in. What? Mark and Emily shouted in unison. Trust me, I said. I have a plan, but I need you two to trust me. Can you do that? Mark looked at me. He saw something in my eyes. The old Sarah, the one who panicked about burnt toast, was gone. I trust you, he said. Good, I said. Emily, give me the gun. What? No. Give it to me. She handed it over. It was heavy, cold. I checked the clip. Full. Okay, I said. Let's go get my dress back. An hour later, I was standing in front of the rusted metal doors of the warehouse on 4th Street. The rain had stopped. The air was thick and humid. I was alone. I had left Mark and Emily in the car, 2 blocks away. I took a deep breath. I raised my hands. Greg, I screamed at the security camera mounted above the door. I'm here, let's talk. Nothing happened for a long minute. Then the heavy metal door groaned. It slid open slowly. 2 men stepped out, the same ones from my house, the one with the scar and the one I had stabbed. His shoulder was bandaged. He looked at me with pure hate. Check her, the scarred man grunted. They patted me down, rough hands. She's clean, the stabbed man spat. Where's the husband? Gone, I lied. He left me, he took the money and ran. They laughed, typical. They grabbed my arms and dragged me inside. The warehouse was huge, smelling of oil and dust. In the center, under a single bright light, sat Greg. He was sitting on a folding chair, looking bored. Next to him on a table was the box, my wedding dress box. Sarah, Greg smiled. It was his office smile, the one he used when he was firing someone. I'm so glad you could join us. Cut the crap, Greg, I said. I know everything. Do you? He stood up, smoothing his suit. That's unfortunate. I was hoping we could do this the easy way. The easy way, I nodded at the box. You found it yet? Greg frowned. Found what? I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. He didn't know. He thought the drive might be there, but he hadn't found it yet. He hadn't ripped the dress apart. The money, I said. Mark told me he hid the cash in the dress. Greg's eyes lit up. Greed. It was always greed. Cash, he asked. I thought it was a ledger. Mark lied to David, I said, improvising wildly. There is no ledger. Mark just wanted the payout. He stole your money, Greg, and he hid it in the lining of that dress. Greg looked at the box, then back at me. Show me, he commanded. If I show you, I said, my voice trembling just enough to be convincing. You let me go. I sign whatever you want. I just want out. Greg studied me. He saw a scared, betrayed wife. He didn't see the woman who had driven a getaway car through the woods. Deal, he said. He gestured to the thugs to let me go. I walked to the table. I opened the box. There it was, my dress. White, beautiful, innocent. I reached in. I felt the bodice. I found the stiff piece of boning on the left side. I could feel the hard lump of the drive. It's in here, I said. I need scissors. Greg nodded to the scarred man. He pulled out a knife. Careful, Greg warned. Don't damage the bills. I took the knife. My hand tightened around the handle. I looked at Greg. You know, I said softly, you were the worst boss I ever had. Greg blinked. Excuse me. And, I added, your stamp collection is boring. Before he could react, I slashed the knife, not at him, but at the light bulb hanging directly above the table. Pop. Sparks showered down. The warehouse plunged into darkness. Grab her, Greg screamed. I didn't run. I dropped to the floor. I grabbed the dress. And then chaos erupted. Crash. The skylight above us shattered. Something dropped from the ceiling. A rope. No. A person. It was Emily. She swung down like an action hero, screaming a war cry that sounded more like a terrified screech, but it worked. She landed directly on top of the scarred man. Now, Sarah, she yelled. I scrambled back, clutching the dress to my chest. Get the lights, Greg shouted. A flashlight beam cut through the dark. It landed on me. Greg was holding a gun. He was 10 feet away. Enough games, he snarled. Give me the dress. I stood up, holding the dress in front of me like a shield. You want it, I yelled. Come get it. I turned and ran toward the back exit. Shoot her, Greg ordered. Bang. A bullet whizzed past my ear. I kicked the back door open. It was locked. I slammed my shoulder against it. It didn't budge. I was trapped. I turned around. Greg was walking toward me, gun raised. Nowhere to go, Sarah, he sneered. I looked at the dress in my hands, the evidence. I looked at Greg. You're right, I said. And then I smiled. But I'm not alone. Greg paused. What? A blinding pair of headlights flooded the warehouse from the loading dock doors behind Greg. The massive metal shutter door began to rise. And there, sitting in my rental car, looking pale but determined, was Mark. He revved the engine. Greg turned around, blinded by the light. Mark, I yelled. Now. Mark floored it. The car shot forward, smashing through the half-open gate. Greg tried to dive out of the way, but he wasn't fast enough. The car clipped him. He spun in the air and landed hard on a pile of pallets. The thugs scattered. Mark slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt just inches from me. Get in, he yelled. I threw the dress in the back seat. Emily came sprinting out of the darkness and dove in after it. I jumped into the passenger seat. Drive, I screamed. Mark threw it in reverse. We backed out of the warehouse, tires smoking. As we spun around to flee, I looked back. Greg was trying to stand up. He was bloodied, furious. He raised his gun. Pop, pop, pop. The back windshield shattered, showering Emily and the dress in glass. Are you okay? I screamed. I'm fine, Emily yelled, brushing glass out of her hair. Just drive. We sped away into the night. We had the dress, we had the evidence, and we were alive. But then, something I never expected happened. We were 5 miles away. The adrenaline was crashing. We did it, Mark breathed, clutching his side. We actually did it. We need to get to the FBI field office, I said. It's downtown. Right, Mark said. But Emily was quiet in the back seat, too quiet. I asked, turning around, you okay? Emily was sitting there, holding the dress. She was staring at it with a strange expression. Sarah, she whispered. What? The boning, she said. I checked the corset. And? She looked up at me. Her face was pale. It's empty, she said. My heart stopped. What? Mark yelled, swerving the car. That's impossible, I put it there. Look, Emily held up the dress. She had ripped the lining open. There was a slit in the fabric, a small, neat slit. But the slot was empty. The drive was gone. Someone took it, I whispered. Who? Mark demanded. Nobody has touched that dress except us and Greg. Greg didn't take it, I said. He was looking for it. Then who? My mind flashed back to the house before we ran. Who had access to the dress? Me, Mark, Emily. And I remembered the moment I walked into the bedroom. I remembered seeing the dress on Emily. I remembered Mark kneeling behind her. And I remembered one other thing. When I was hiding in the woods, I saw a black SUV pull up before the thugs arrived. I thought it was backup for them. But now, a terrible thought formed in my mind. Mark, I said slowly, when you sent that bracelet to Jessica, did you talk to her? No, Mark said. Why? Because, I said, pulling out the burner phone again, I just realized something. I replayed the video from under the bed, the one of Greg's men. I listened closely to the background noise. There was a faint sound, a ringtone. It wasn't a standard ringtone. It was a specific song, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I knew that ringtone. I looked at Emily. Emily looked at me. Her eyes went wide. No, she whispered. Sarah, you can't think. That ringtone, I said. It belongs to Mom. Silence in the car. Mom, Mark asked. Your mother. My mother hates Greg, I said. She always said he was shady. So, I said, feeling sick. She came to the house today before I got there. She has a key. How do you know? Because, I pointed to the dress in Emily's lap. Smell it. Emily sniffed the fabric. Lavender, she said, and cigarette smoke. Mom smokes, I said, secretly, and she wears lavender lotion. Why would your mother take the drive? Mark asked, bewildered. I don't know, I said, but we have to find out, turn the car around. Where are we going? To my parents' house, I said. We drove in silence. The betrayal was piling up so high I couldn't see the top. First Mark, then Greg, now my own mother. We pulled up to my parents' colonial house. It was dark, but the front door was wide open. Stay here, I told Mark. You're hurt. I'm coming, he said stubbornly. We walked up the steps. We entered the foyer. Mom, I called out. Dad. No answer. We walked into the living room. And there, sitting in her favorite armchair, was my mother. But she wasn't alone. Sitting across from her, holding a cup of tea, was David, Mark's brother. The victim, the one Mark was protecting. David looked up at us. He smiled, a cold, shark-like smile. Hey, family, David said. Took you long enough. David, Mark gasped. What are you doing here? Where is Mom? My mother looked up. She had been crying. I'm sorry, Sarah, she whispered. He made me do it. Made you do what? I asked. David stood up. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, black micro drive. "She retrieved the package for me," David said. "While you were busy playing hero in the woods, Mom here. She's always had a soft spot for her favorite son-in-law's brother." "You used her." Mark stepped forward, fists clenched. "You used an old woman." "I used leverage," David said. "And now I have the only thing that matters." He held up the drive. "Greg is willing to pay $5 million for this," David said, "and I'm going to sell it to him." "You can't," I said. "That drive proves Greg is a criminal. If you sell it, he walks free, and I go to jail." David shrugged. "Collateral damage, Sarah. I need the money. I have debts." He pulled out a gun, a sleek silver pistol. "Now," he said, "everyone on the floor or Mom gets it." He pointed the gun at my mother. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a slaughter. I looked at Mark. He was pale, weak. He couldn't fight. I looked at Emily. She was terrified. I looked at David. And then I looked at my mother. She caught my eye, and for a split second she stopped crying. She winked. My mother winked. I froze. For a second I thought the stress had finally broken my brain. Maybe I was hallucinating. My mother was 70 years old. She knitted blankets for shelter cats. She baked zucchini bread. She was currently being held at gunpoint by a man who had betrayed his own brother. And she winked at me. "What are you looking at?" David snapped, noticing my expression. He glanced at Mom. Mom's face was instantly a mask of terror again. She sniffled, clutching her teacup with both hands. "Please, David," she quavered, her voice shaking perfectly. "My hands are hurting. Can I just put my tea down on the table? I don't want to spill it on the rug. You know how hard Earl Grey stains are to get out." David rolled his eyes. He was arrogant. He held the gun, he held the drive, he held all the cards. He saw a fragile old lady worried about her Persian rug. He didn't see what I saw. My mother wasn't just worried about the rug. She was angling the cup. "Fine," David grunted, looking back at me. "Put it down, slowly, and you, Sarah, kick the gun over here, the one you took from Emily." I reached for the gun tucked in my waistband. I moved slowly, my eyes locked on Mom. She was trembling, but her eyes were sharp, focused. She started to lower the cup toward the coffee table. But she didn't set it down. "David, honey," Mom said softly. "What now?" David barked, turning his head toward her. "You forgot one thing about this family," she said. Her voice dropped the tremble. It was suddenly steady, iron hard. David frowned. "What?" "We don't like guests who are rude." In one fluid motion, my mother, the woman who needed help opening jar lids, flicked her wrist. The steaming hot tea didn't go onto the table. It went right into David's face. David screamed. It was a raw, high-pitched sound of shock and pain. He dropped the gun. He clawed at his eyes, stumbling back. "Now," Mom yelled. I didn't need telling twice. I launched myself across the room. I tackled David around the waist. We hit the floor hard. He was stronger than me, thrashing and cursing, blinded by the hot liquid. He swung an elbow, hitting me in the jaw. I tasted blood, but I didn't let go. "Mark," I screamed. Mark was already moving. He was hurt, bleeding from his side, but adrenaline is a powerful drug. He dove onto his brother, pinning David's arms to the floor. "Emily, get the drive," Mark shouted. The micro drive had flown out of David's hand when he fell. It skittered across the hardwood floor, sliding under the sofa. Emily scrambled on her hands and knees. "I'm looking. I can't see it." David roared, bucking his hips, throwing Mark off him. Mark groaned, clutching his wound. David scrambled to his feet, blinking water and tea out of his red, blistering eyes. He looked wild, desperate. He saw the gun on the floor. I saw it too. We both lunged for it. David was closer, his hand closed around the grip. He raised it, pointing it blindly in my direction. "I'm going to kill you all," he screamed. Click. The sound echoed in the silent living room. David pulled the trigger again. Click. He looked at the gun, confused. My mother stood up from her armchair. She smoothed down her cardigan. She looked calm, composed, like she was about to suggest we watch a movie. "It's empty, David," she said. David stared at her. "What?" "The gun," Mom said. "I took the clip out while you were in the bathroom earlier. You really shouldn't leave weapons on the kitchen counter when you go to pee. It's irresponsible." My jaw dropped. Mark started laughing. It was a pained, wheezy laugh, but it was real. "Mom," Mark said, "you are terrifying." "I raised 2 daughters in the 80s, Mom said, walking over and picking up a heavy crystal vase from the mantel. "I can handle a little punk like you." David looked at the empty gun. He looked at me. He looked at Mark. And then he looked at the front door. He turned to run. But he didn't get far. Because the front door burst open. "FBI, get on the ground now." A dozen agents in tactical gear swarmed into the house, rifles raised. David froze. He raised his hands slowly. "It wasn't me," he yelled, his voice cracking. "They kidnapped me, I'm the victim." An agent stepped forward. He wasn't wearing tactical gear. He was wearing a suit. He looked tired. "Save it, David," the agent said. "We have the audio." David blinked. "Audio." The agent pointed to my mother. Mom reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. The screen was glowing. "I've been on the line with 911 for 20 minutes, she said sweetly. "I put it on mute so you wouldn't hear the operator, but they heard everything, including your confession about the money laundering." David slumped. His shoulders collapsed. The arrogance vanished, leaving just a pathetic, greedy man. The agents grabbed him. They cuffed him. They dragged him out the door. As he passed Mark, David looked at him. "I'm sorry, brother," David whispered. Mark didn't look away. He didn't look angry. He just looked sad. "You were always loose, David," Mark said softly. The agents took him away. The room fell silent. I looked at my family. My sister, covered in glass dust. My husband, bleeding through a bandage. My mother holding a crystal vase like a club. I started to cry. Not sad tears, relief tears, the kind that shake your whole body because you finally know it's over. "Sarah," Mark limped over to me. He wrapped his arms around me. "We're okay," he whispered into my hair. "We're okay." An EMT came in to check on Mark. Agents were bagging evidence. Emily was explaining everything to a detective. But I just stood there, holding on to my husband, listening to his heartbeat. It was strong, steady. "Wait," I said, pulling back. "The drive, Emily, did you find it?" Emily stood up from behind the couch. She held up her hand. Between her fingers was the tiny black square. "The evidence." "Got it," she grinned. I took the drive. It felt light, insignificant. But it held the weight of our entire future. I walked over to the agent in the suit. "I think you want this," I said. He took it. He put it in an evidence bag. "This is going to put a lot of bad people away, Mrs. Thompson," he said, "including your boss." "Good," I said. He was a terrible mentor anyway. The next few days were a blur. Mark was rushed to surgery to stitch up his side. He was fine, just sore and grumpy about the hospital food. I spent hours at the FBI office, giving statements, signing papers, explaining every detail of Greg's operation. It turned out Mark was right. Greg had been setting me up for years. My business trips were cover for his money movements. My accounts were tagged. If David hadn't stolen that ledger, I would have been arrested within a month. Mark saved me. In his own, stupid, lying, secretive way, he saved me. 3 days later, I was finally allowed to bring Mark home. The house was a mess. There was police tape on the door. The window was still broken where the thugs had entered. But I didn't care. I helped Mark to the couch. I propped him up with pillows. "You comfortable?" I asked. "I'm fine," he said. He grabbed my hand. "Sarah, sit, please." I sat next to him. He looked at me. His eyes were serious. "I'm sorry," he said. "For which part?" I asked. The lying, the stealing my passport, or the part where you let me believe you were cheating on me with my sister. Mark winced. All of it, especially the sister part, that was accidental. Mark, I said, squeezing his hand. Why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you trust me? Mark looked down at our joined hands. Because I wanted to be the hero, he admitted, his voice quiet. For 7 years, Sarah, I've watched you climb the ladder. You're successful, you're smart. You make more money than I do. You handle everything. He looked up at me. I felt useless, he said. So when David came to me, I thought, this is it. I can fix this. I can protect her. I can be the strong husband. I felt a lump in my throat. You idiot, I whispered. I don't need a hero. I need a partner. I know that now, he said. I saw you in the woods. I saw you in that warehouse. You were amazing, Sarah. You were terrifying, but amazing. I smiled. I learned from the best. Apparently, my mother is a secret assassin. Mark laughed. Remind me never to skip Sunday dinner again. We sat there in silence for a moment. The afternoon sun was streaming through the window, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. So, Mark said, clearing his throat, what now? Greg is in jail. My brother is in jail. We're both unemployed. Actually, I said, I'm not unemployed. Mark raised an eyebrow. Really? The FBI agent, I said. He was impressed with how I decoded Greg's secondary accounts during the debrief. He offered me a job, forensic accounting. Mark's jaw dropped. You're going to work for the FBI. Maybe, I shrugged. It pays less, but the benefits are good, and nobody tries to kill me. That's a plus, Mark agreed. And what about you? I asked. Are you going back to graphic design? Mark looked at the coffee table. There was a magazine there, a bridal magazine. Actually, he said, I had an idea. Oh no, I groaned. No more ideas. Hear me out, he grinned. The wedding dress, the way I modified it, the hidden pockets, the reinforced structure. Yeah. I think there's a market for that, he said. Safety couture, hidden compartments for travel, dresses with actual functional pockets. I stared at him. You want to design dresses with pockets. Women love pockets, Sarah. You're always complaining about pockets. I started to laugh. I laughed until my sides hurt. Okay, I said, wiping a tear from my eye. Do it, make the pockets. He kissed me. It was a long, slow kiss. It tasted like second chances. I love you, Sarah, he said. I love you too, Mark, I said, even if you are a terrible liar. 6 months later. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. And my backyard looked like a fairy tale. White roses were everywhere. Fairy lights were strung between the trees. I stood in front of the mirror in our bedroom. I was wearing the dress. My wedding dress. We had cleaned the mud off. We had stitched the lining back up. It looked perfect. You ready? Emily asked, poking her head in the door. She was wearing a bridesmaid dress that thankfully fit her perfectly. I'm ready, I said. I walked downstairs. My dad was waiting. He looked teary-eyed. You look beautiful, sweetie, he said. We walked out into the backyard. There were about 30 people there. My parents, Mark's friends, a few of my new colleagues from the bureau who insisted on checking the perimeter just out of habit. And at the end of the aisle, standing under a wooden arch, was Mark. He looked handsome in his suit. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't looking at an exit. He was looking at me. And he was crying. I walked down the aisle. I felt light. I felt happy. When I reached him, he took my hands. Wow, he whispered. Does it fit? I whispered back, winking. Like a glove, he grinned. Tight. We both stifled a laugh. The priest looked confused, but he kept going. We said our vows. This time we didn't just repeat words. We meant them. We knew what for worse meant. We knew what in sickness meant. We knew what danger meant. And we chose each other anyway. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the priest said. You may kiss the bride. Mark kissed me. The guests cheered. My mom blew a loud whistle with her fingers, another hidden talent apparently. As we walked back up the aisle, hand in hand, I looked at the crowd. I saw my mom winking at me. I saw Emily hugging a groomsman. I saw a life that was messy and complicated and crazy. But it was ours. We reached the end of the aisle. Mark pulled me close. "So," he said, "Mrs. Thompson, what do we do now?" I looked at him. I touched my stomach. I hadn't told him yet. I found out yesterday. The stress, the danger, the running. Somehow it had reset everything. Or maybe it was just fate. "Well," I said, smiling up at him, "I think we need to start working on that nursery." Mark stopped walking. His eyes went wide. "Sarah," he choked out, "really?" "Really," I nodded. "Oh my God." He picked me up and spun me around right there on the grass. "I'm going to be a dad." "Put me down, you goof," I laughed. He set me down, but he didn't let go. He looked at me with so much love it felt like sunshine. "Best anniversary gift ever," he said. I rested my head on his shoulder. The nightmare was over. The bad guys were gone. The secrets were out. And as I looked at the blue sky, holding the hand of the man I loved, carrying the future we had dreamed of, I knew one thing for sure. We weren't just survivors, we were a team. And they lived happily ever after, with a big smile.